Ashley figured out pretty quickly that something was off with her husband. She couldn't quite put a finger on what it was, but she just could sense it. And during all this, she's pregnant with their 5th baby. From a very young age, she knew that she wanted to be a mother. She grew up Mormon and a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. Being family-oriented is also a big value in that church. When she was in college, she was working at the university gym, and one night, one of her friends introduced her to 23-year-old Emmett Corrigan, and he was a medical student. And Ashley says that when they met, it was definitely love at first sight. There was some type of spark that instantly flew, and the two of them started spending a lot of time together. And he was Mormon, but he did not grow up Mormon. He actually found Mormonism on his own later in life. They decided that they wanted to get married after only a few months of dating. So on March 6, 2004, they got married at the Mount Timpanogos LDS Temple. And only a few months after that, Ashley found out that she was pregnant with twin girls. Their twins, Boston and Bailey, were born in 2005, and Ashley was very happy to be a mother. And she also said Emmett was very happy to be a father and described him as a very attentive, loving, very involved father from the beginning. They knew that they wanted to have a big family, so in 2007, she gave birth to their 3rd child, a boy who they named Teague. She said that Emmett was very excited to have a son and was a very protective father over his 3 children. They did so much together, and for a few years, it felt to Ashley that they had created the perfect family, at least from her own standards. But things started to change slightly in 2008 when Emmett decided that he wanted a change of career. He ended up deciding to become a lawyer, and obviously that's a lot of education. And he and Ashley talked extensively about this decision, and she ultimately wanted to support him doing this. So they packed up everything they owned, completely changed their life, and moved with their 3 children to Spokane, Washington, where Ashley's parents lived. Because Emmett was attending school at Gonzaga, he ended up having to deal with a pretty long commute, about an hour, twice a day, to go to and from campus, which definitely took a lot of time away from seeing his family, and this was tough on them. But like I said, Ashley was a very natural mother. She loved being home with her kids, and she did most of the childcare, and that really wasn't a problem for her. I mean, being a mom was her dream. So the fact that Emmett got busier wasn't necessarily the worst thing ever. So Emmett started wrapping up law school in November of 2009, and Ashley was definitely looking forward to that chapter ending. And around this time, Ashley also gave birth to their 4th child, a daughter who they named Kalia. And after he graduated law school, their family packed up again and they moved to Boise. And Emmett got a job there working at a bankruptcy law firm. But obviously on top of working at the firm, he still was prepping for the bar. So there were a lot of hours that he was cooped up studying and wasn't available to Ashley and the kids. And if that wasn't enough, Ashley then became pregnant with her 5th child. Obviously, at that point, Ashley was very much looking forward to Emmett passing the bar and hopefully having more time with the family. And eventually he did pass the bar, but his workload did not slow down at all. In fact, it increased. And obviously, people don't choose to be lawyers because it allows for lots of downtime. I mean, it's a very demanding career, and Ashley did understand this. Thankfully, though, when Emmett was around, she said that he was a very involved and attentive father. By mid-2010, he decided he wanted to open a small criminal defense practice as sort of a side gig to make some extra money. He would still be working at the bankruptcy firm, but he'd always been very interested in criminal defense, so he decided to pursue it. But eventually, the workload just became too much, and he decided to hire someone else. And that's when Candy Hall comes into the picture. Candy was an experienced paralegal, and she had been looking for a job since September of that year and had been laid off by her previous employer. And just like Emmett, Candy was a family-oriented person. She was also married and had kids of her own. And I'm sure as a true crime viewer, you probably already guessed that there was a connection and an attraction between Emmett and Candy. And it only took 2 weeks for their professional relationship to turn into a relationship. Of course, they tried to keep this a secret, but Ashley figured out pretty quickly that something was off with her husband. She couldn't quite put a finger on what it was, but she just could sense it. She could tell that there was a emotional disconnect between them, and he seemed distant. And during all this, she's pregnant with their 5th baby, and he was not making time for her the way that he had in the past through all of her other pregnancies. And yes, he was working a lot and had a lot going on in his professional life, but a lot of his extra time was going to Candy. So one day, she decides to surprise Emmett at work. She was coming back from a doctor's appointment, actually, and was excited to update him on the health of their unborn son. And so she goes to his work and she's hoping that they can go have lunch together and spend a little free time together. But when she showed up, she was surprised to see that Emmett did not seem excited to see her at all. He turned ghost white when she walked in and seemed very uncomfortable that she was there. And when she was there, she was also greeted by Candy Hall. And she said that Candy was wearing a very short skirt and super high heels. And for a second, she thought maybe this is it. Maybe he's having an affair. But she quickly put this out of her mind because Candy was quite a bit older than Emmett. So once their fifth child was born, Titus, Candy had actually been extremely kind to Ashley. She sent her all these care packages and baby blankets. Ashley even got a lot of his newborn pictures taken with the blankets that Candy gave her. And at that point, she really pushed the whole idea that Emmett was having an affair with Candy out of her mind. She did her best to kind of push past all the thoughts that she was having and continue to think of ways that they could repair their problems because she was set on having this perfect family. She even tried marriage counseling. And when it came time for them to meet for their session, Emmett didn't even show up. Candy's husband, Rob, is experiencing something similar to what Ashley is. He said he saw his wife pulling away from him, but the difference was he seemed pretty aware that Candy was sleeping with her boss. So by March 11th of 2001, both Rob and Ashley were really fed up with what they were dealing with their spouses. But Ashley, of course, was not ready to give up, and she said she woke up that morning and decided to take matters into her own hands. She said, I was determined to fix it that day, get to the bottom of what's going on and fix this marriage. So she spent all day cooking this amazing meal for her husband. She was hoping that he would come home and see that she had spent all this time cooking and see all their beautiful children and be very thankful for her. She even cooked his favorite meal. She set the table super nicely and had cleaned the whole house. And she was hoping that he would come home, they would all sit down together and have dinner as a family for the first time in a while. And that maybe they could talk after this and really get their relationship back on track. But Emmett came home late, of course, and all the food was cold by the time he got home and the kids were already in bed. And then to make it even worse, he said he had already eaten and didn't want to eat any of her food. Very quickly after he came home, he tells her that he has to leave again and he is going out to Walgreens. And she begged him to stay, but he is adamant that he's got to go to Walgreens. He said he had to go and pick up a prescription. And meanwhile, Candy is saying the same thing to her husband. She needs to go to Walgreens. And earlier that evening, she had come home to Rob packing up all his things. He had had enough. So he left their house around 8:45 and didn't say where he was going or what he was planning on doing. Not long after, Candy leaves the house to go to Walgreens. And of course, she is going there to meet up with Emmett. And the two of them both arrived in the Walgreens parking lot around 9:10 p.m. Now, she did end up picking up a prescription, but clearly that wasn't the main reason that she was going there. Candy gets in Emmett's truck, and then the two of them went and put gas in it and drove around for a bit until parking near a subdivision that was under construction, where, of course, they went and proceeded to have. So then Candy receives a call from her daughter, who had also gone to Walgreens and saw her mom's car parked there, but her mom wasn't in the car and wasn't in Walgreens, so she called her to see where she was. Candy, obviously, was busy and didn't answer the first couple of calls, so her daughter was concerned and she called her father and told him that she had seen her mother's car parked at Walgreens, but her mom was nowhere to be found. Obviously, Rob doesn't want to tell his daughter what he thinks is going on, but he is immediately suspicious that Candy is probably off with Emmett somewhere. Eventually, their daughter was able to get a hold of Candy, and she told her that she had met up with a friend in a parking lot, but she was on her way home. But at this point, it was too late. Rob knew exactly where his wife was, who she was with, and what they were doing, and he was already upset with her, and this just threw him over the edge. So as Candy and Emmett are driving back to the Walgreens parking lot after doing the deed, she gets a call from Rob, and he wants to confront her. And before she even really has a chance to talk to him on the phone, Emmett takes the phone from her and talks to Rob himself. She said that Emmett was extremely confrontational with Rob on the phone. This conversation was pretty short, and by the time they got to the parking lot, Rob was already there waiting for them. And before they even got to the parking lot, he is seen on surveillance footage just pacing the aisles of the Walgreens. Maybe he thought he would find the two of them inside, but when he realized that they weren't there yet, he parked his truck in a parking spot and just waited for them to enter the lot. So it was just after 10 p.m. when Candy and Emmett pull into the Walgreens parking lot, and they don't know Rob is there. So she gets out of Emmett's car and starts walking towards her own. But of course, Rob is sitting there waiting, and as soon as he sees Candy get out of the car, he starts walking towards them. Now, this is where the details of the story get kind of fuzzy. If you take Candy's word for how everything happened, here's how she said things went down. She said that Emmett got out of the car too and began verbally attacking and threatening Rob. She said that it was Emmett who instigated contact with Rob after Rob had told him to go back to his wife and 5 kids. Candy said at that point she started to walk towards her own car and turned away from the 2 of them, and at that point she heard 2 gunshots go off, followed by a third. She said she turned around to see what had happened, and then she saw both of them on the ground, and Rob was bleeding from his head and Emmett was bleeding from his head and his chest. Candy immediately runs over to Rob and says that she flings the gun away from him. So someone nearby hears the gunshots and calls 911, and then just a minute later, Candy calls 911 herself, and she is absolutely frantic in this call. And even though someone else had called 911, they didn't actually witness this all unfolding. They just heard the gunshots. So Candy is the only witness, even though she said she was partially turned around. So the ambulance gets there, and the EMTs discover 2 males on the ground, one who is already deceased and one who is still responsive but not doing well. The first bullet had been shot through Emmett's chest. The second shot was fatal. Rob was still alive and was quickly rushed to the hospital. So they get him to the hospital, treat him, and after that, of course, they question him. And not so surprisingly, he says he doesn't remember what happened. He explains that he remembers getting there and seeing Candy and Emmett pull in, and that when they arrived, Emmett immediately gets out of the car and starts being aggressive. And he claims that during this altercation, his gun just happens to fall out of his pocket, and then Emmett picks it up and shoots him. And at first he claims that he doesn't remember shooting Emmett, but later on he claimed he did in self-defense. Meanwhile, Candy is also being questioned. And I'm sure it will surprise none of you when I say that she blatantly lied to police when they asked her about her relationship with Emmett. Candy claimed that the 2 of them met up to talk about life and their marital problems, but the 2 were never romantically involved. She explained how she received a call from her daughter and a second call from Rob, and it was during the call with Rob that Emmett took the phone and began threatening him. And she confirmed that Emmett was the aggressor once they got to the parking lot, but she turned and walked away before the gunshots went off, so she couldn't say who shot first. So poor Ashley is at home feeling very broken about their marriage and what had happened that night. And at 1 a.m. on March 12th, several officers from the Meridian Police Department knocked on her door and told her that her husband had been shot and killed, and she was absolutely shocked. And if that wasn't devastating enough, she then finds out that it's Candy's husband, Rob, who shot and killed Emmett, which immediately confirms to her that the 2 of them had been having an affair. Ashley was left to raise these 5 children on her own. Meanwhile, investigators are looking more and more into what really happened because they had a feeling that they were not getting the full story from Candy and Rob, and they were right. They found printed emails in Rob's car which outlined the affair that his wife was having with her boss. And obviously this not only confirms that she was having an affair, but that her husband knew about it. So they're able to establish motive pretty quickly. And a chemical analysis also proved that Rob was the only person with gunshot residue on his hands, meaning that it was impossible for Emmett to have shot Rob at all. So as a result, Robert Dean Hall was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Rob's trial began in October of 2012. In the end, there was more than enough evidence to prove Rob's guilt, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove that the attack was premeditated. So as a result, Rob was convicted of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. And the earliest he is up for parole is 2028, which is quickly approaching. As for Ashley, she did her best to move on with life and make it as enjoyable and normal for her kids as possible, which clearly was very difficult. Candy had never taken responsibility for the part that she played in Emmett's death, and that always haunted Ashley. And lastly, and this is some good news, she did go on to get remarried. Sounds like he is a wonderful man. His name is Scott Boyson, and together they had 2 more kids, Kennedy and Kyler. I can't imagine she'll ever be the same after all that she's been through, but it sounds like she has really taken her life into her own hands. She is a wonderful mother, and I think she is incredibly strong and inspiring to me. But that is all I have for you guys today. Stay safe out there.